What's up, scientists of Reddit? What's a scary science fact that the public knows nothing about? A CME, coronal mass ejection, is the most likely civilization-ending disaster to come from space. The sun emits them regularly, and they hit the Earth every few hundred years. The last one occurred in the 1890s, but society at the time was less susceptible to the effects. Were one to hit the Earth today, it would basically destroy all the tech infrastructure on whichever side of the planet is facing the sun at the time. This would knock the affected hemisphere back into the stupid ages, and it would take decades to recover, altering the global balance of power forever. It's only a matter of time. We could mitigate the effects, but it would be expensive, so we haven't and likely never will. At least not until the problem becomes real to people. By then it will be too late. This is a much more likely scenario than an asteroid impact. Story 2. Airplanes are dynamically stable, but helicopters are dynamically unstable. That means, if an airplane pilot lets go of the controls of a small plane with no autopilot, if it's correctly trimmed and balanced, it will keep flying level until it runs out of fuel. If a helicopter pilot lets go of the controls, in about 2.4 seconds, it will tip over to such a degree that it is unrecoverable. We can let go of one control, the collective, for a little while by frictioning it in place to change the radio, adjust something, scratch our nose or whatever. But it's friction on, do the thing with the left hand, friction off, and hand back on the collective. We fly 3 seconds away from falling out of the sky all the time. But then that's also kind of the same for bicycles, although they can only tip left and right, not every direction. Subconsciously, you are always adjusting your weight and controlling the steering to stay upright. Same thing in a heli. You balance on a column of air and you keep balancing the whole time, just like on a bike. You don't even notice. You just do it. Story 3. All onions, all veggies in the allium family, are toxic to dogs. Worst-case scenario then can develop AIHA, autoimmune hemolytic anemia, whereas the body destroys its own red blood cells. This disease is about 80% fatal. My dog caught it, we are not sure from where, but was a primary disease, not a result of a cancer. We think he was eating leeks out of the garden. Took a week in the hospital, 2 blood transfusions, and about 6 months of meds to get him back. He started at 45 pounds and was down to 19 pounds at the worst part of it. Story 4. There are weaponized strains of anthrax which can remain viable and dangerous for 40-plus years after release. In 1942, the UK tested an anthrax bomb on Grunard Island, killing a flock of sheep in days. Some died in hours. Examination showed that the spores could remain active for decades, and decontamination proved impossible at the time. The project was scrapped. Fast forward to 1981, an eco-terrorist group smuggled a sample off of the island and threatened the UK government with releasing it if the island wasn't decontaminated. The spores were still active and deadly. It took 4 years to plan and execute the cleanup, using 280 tons of formaldehyde in a seawater solution, and removing 7 hectares worth of soil to a depth of 3 feet, about 58,000 tons of topsoil, where the concentration was too high for the juice to do the job. The island was confirmed clean in 1990, 4 years after cleanup began. Story 5. Heart muscle cells don't reproduce much in adults, roughly 1% per year. If you have an infarction or other stressor that kills those cells, then your heart won't be able to grow new cells to replace the dead ones. This is why patients with diseases like heart failure end up needing a heart transplant. Trying to get this process to happen is a major goal for many cardiac researchers. Story 6. Approximately 60%, in some reports, of the world's population have the parasite Toxoplasma gondii in their brain. For a long time, it's thought to have been a benign presence, but recent statistical research shows that it may have an impact on things like levels of anger and rates of accidents and suicide. When gondii is on rats, it changes their behavior so that they find the smell of cat urine sexually appealing. So they find cats and get eaten. In the gut of the cat, the parasite can reproduce. Its literal aim is to kill you so it can end up in a cat. It's known to affect your hormones, causing severe depression, increased anger, and far riskier and more damaging behavior. Increased susceptibility to substance abuse and seeing risky and dangerous behavior as less serious than it is. Sometimes fun. If you have ever lived with cats, or spent a long time with cats, you almost definitely carry it. Story 7. If your dog swims in a lake after receiving a spot on flea treatment, it absolutely decimates the invertebrate population. A large dog swimming in 8 Olympic swimming pools worth of water soon after treatment will leach enough neurotoxin to kill 50% of the lake's invertebrate population within 48 hours. I say after, I mean relatively soon after, within say a day, to have an effect quite this devastating. The leaching does reduce over the month, but it's still there, and the effect of multiple dogs still allows for a terrible buildup of chemicals. Story 8. So many people will struggle with infertility. It's not talked about or really discussed in middle school or high school in health class. When it happens, it's such a shock to the families, and they are completely unprepared. The numbers are going up as well. Statistical 1/4 pregnancies end in miscarriage, which is pretty high, but again, miscarriage isn't discussed. Story 9. Another Carrington event. The original Carrington event was in 1859, which was basically an intense geomagnetic storm that knocked out telegrams because that's all the technology there was to disrupt back then. Nowadays, we use electricity for virtually everything. If it hit now, the effect would be like an EMP, but globally. There'd be no functional technology that involved electrics. In essence, losing all electrics would in turn stop communications, then logistics, and then fundamental infrastructure like food distribution, healthcare, and utilities, other than electricity. Story 10. I learned about Ton 618 the other day. My facts here may be mildly incorrect. Feel free to Google. It's a black hole about 10.3 billion light-years away, but we can still detect the massive amount of light bending around it. It's so large, they had to make a new category of black hole for it, called ultramassive black holes. It's believed to be the largest thing in the universe. Its diameter is 14 times the diameter of Neptune's orbit, so it could fit our entire solar system in it 14 times across, side to side. If the black hole replaced our sun, we would be deleted. If it replaced the black hole that is currently at the center of the Milky Way, within 120 years the Milky Way would be deleted. This black hole doesn't swallow planets. It swallows entire galaxies. The idea of this thing freaks me out. Story 11. The human body temperature in developed countries is actually declining, and at the same time, global warming is increasing the temperature thresholds for many fungus types. This is leading to a whole new medical issue of fungus infecting humans, and its main source of protection, body temperature, is no longer working. That body temperature is a large reason for the success of mammals all over the world. After the KT extinction, the sun was blocked and cold-blooded species couldn't raise their body temperature to kill off infections in their bodies. There is ample evidence that after KT that fungus spread all over the world in massive quantities, which leads many to believe this led to the ascendancy of mammals on Earth.